Now we'll open it up to a question and answer. Really quick, the way we'll do that is we'll go by a show of hands. Keith will have the wireless microphone. I ask that we, stand by just a second, Keith. I ask that when we ask the question, we make sure we direct it to a specific individual and keep it one question at a time just so we can maximize. Like, not too many multi-part questions or questions for the whole panel, just so we can get as many people as possible. And at this point, we'll add in the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office, and they can answer from there, and then the City Council too can answer questions if you directed that direction. So we'll go ahead.
Chief Zorro's here with me as well.
Right, yeah, Chief Zorro can speak on behalf of the Lakewood Police Department. So we'll start with, just go ahead and raise your hand if you have a question.
One of the potential homes is going to
Go
be
ahead and stand up, ma'am, and then introduce yourself and ask a question directly to an individual, if you could, please.
Yes, sir. My name is Susan Walker. One of the houses in question that they're currently working on to turn into a group home, they haven't got their license yet, is right next door to me, 20 feet from my house. I don't have any small children at home. My grandkids live out of state. However, they do come to visit. My other family members come to visit. My question is, if they put a sex offender in this house, how long will it take a police officer to get there on Turquoise Drive if something happens to one of my family members, or heaven forbid, myself?
I really can't speak to a hypothetical. I mean, if you call 911 when something happens, especially something of that magnitude, we will get there as quickly as we can.
I'm just going to stay on this side of the room, so if anybody was on the other hand. Go around.
Hi, my name is Joyce Moronis, and I'm kind of a little bit confused on who said what, but I think it was Senator O'Ban that spoke about how we need to stay on top of people and continue to push for things. But I want to know, what is our next step? What do we do? Do we do a letter writing campaign, an email campaign? How do we keep the pressure on instead of just calling you and saying, what have you done lately?
So my answer will pivot off of what Maya Sposa mentioned. The way you exact change in a democratic republic like ours, you've got your electeds right here, is you put pressure on us to make sure we do what we say we're going to do. So what I would suggest, what you get from all of us here tonight, is an absolute clear pledge that we will support an absolute ban on placing violent criminals in adult family homes. It's about I've got the legislation. It's about a one-paragraph bill, very straightforward, very clear, makes it obvious to DSHS what they can and cannot do. So I would suggest you talk to each one of us and get us to pledge that in the legislature we will sponsor that bill and we will vote for it and we will push it through the legislature. That's how, and then you keep after us. You keep calling, emailing, and making sure that the commitment you get from us, we carry through. So that would be the one practical thing I would suggest.
Definitely holding your legislators accountable is part of the mix. We also need to build support for the ideas that we've shared here tonight with another 144 people, ideally, if we're to have unanimous votes, or at least a majority of people to get legislation over the finish line, right? So, and I would also suggest that when it comes to facilities, I would go a step further than enhanced service facilities and create a separate classification of facilities that has that high level of security, so it could take it completely out of the adult family home arena. And that is another legislative idea that we could build and should be building support for, in addition to the ones that I previously mentioned. So it's building broad support and holding each of us accountable.
don't convene till January. Bills will be hitting the floor February, March. The earliest the governor could sign a law like that would be April, late March, April. In the meantime, call the governor, have him do an executive order, and say, let's make something that makes sense. Do not, at least hold up until the legislature meets and makes this change the law, prohibit putting criminals, and especially sexual offenders, in adult family homes. Ask the governor to do that. He has the ability to make that executive order and get it done. And hopefully we will have the votes in the legislature to pass the legislation that Senator Ban is going to drop to the Senate. I will promise you, Senator, I will do a companion bill in the House, and we'll get it done. Thank you.
Good evening, Arthur Henry from the Brook Neighborhood. I find myself wavering between apathy and anger on this topic. Apathy because it feels like we're fighting an organization that has no accountability to the locals here, DSHS. Senator O'Ban, I think I heard you say that a judge in Cowlitz County could determine whether or not a predator could be reintroduced to their locality. How is it that a judge in another locality determines that a predator's proper location is in Pierce County? Why do we not have a say? Why do our judges not have a say in that matter?
That is an excellent question. So, the Special Commitment Center folks that are being released by judicial fiat, by judicial decision. And it rests with the judge where that person committed the offense that led to their becoming a resident of the Special Commitment Center. So that means that they offended in Cowlitz County, Mr. Prosecutor.
I am following this, yes.
Okay, you'll correct me if I get this wrong. So it's a Cowlitz County judge who makes the decision. Should this individual be released? Now, what happens is DSHS puts together the least restrictive alternative plan and presents it to the judge and says, Judge, you know, we don't have any facilities in Cowlitz County because we're too lazy and we didn't take the time to actually build them. But you know, we have this great adult family home in Oak Brook, and you can put that person in Oak Brook, and you're the Cowlitz County judge, and you're thinking, well, let's see, shall I try to find some place in Cowlitz County where it would be fair that they go, or should I make it the problem of Pierce County that DSHS is recommending they be placed in? That's how these things go down in many cases. So that's why these 3 sexual offenders that were mentioned earlier, including the one who murdered an 11-year-old child, all 3 of them were from outside Pierce County. Right? So that's the fair share issue. But I want to underscore, this is not just a fair share problem. What about a Pierce County pedophile who is a threat to the community? So we don't have the fair share problem. They're from Pierce County. Should they be placed in an adult family home? And the answer, of course, is no. So that's why it's a two-stage problem. It isn't just a fair share issue. It's whether we should be banning individuals who were never intended to go into these facilities that are designed for people who are not a threat to their community, who need adult family homes. The senior who's has dementia, the severely disabled individual, those are who should go into adult family homes.
And just to add to that, I think with respect to that Cowlitz County judge, under current law and legislation that I sponsor now is the law of the land, they're supposed to be considering that county of origin, that home county. But right, if everything's been baked and the transition plan points to Pierce County, a judge is likely going to have that person stay in Pierce County, which is why we need to upstream the planning, and the legislation I passed or sponsored last year would do that and look to the county of origin, the home county first when the transition begins, and that also includes Department of Corrections. So the DSHS has some role, but Department of Corrections has a huge role with respect to scouting out those transition locations. So if we upstream it and have that county of origin looked at early on, rather than at the time of signing an order by a judge and it's all baked, I mean, we need to make sure that we're attending to that issue at the very get-go, not when a judge is signing an order releasing someone into Pierce County.
name is Kevin Eves. I have a couple of questions. Why are we still allowing permits to build more group homes when we already have our fair share already, right? So stop issuing the permits, they don't build any more homes. We gotta start now. We can't just wait for legislation to come back and talk about it. We need to do things now that we can do. Stop issuing the permits and address the issues that are currently here. So where does it start? I mean, do we have any answers? I haven't heard any answers yet. I've heard about talk, but we need answers now. So my other question is, so a group home has 6 residents, and maybe one's Nana, like you said, maybe another person's a sex offender. Is that how it works? You just kind of a random lottery of whoever gets to go in there? That's a little scary. So what solutions do we have as far as regulating who stays at a group home? Can we have a group home for just dementia patients, a group home for sex offenders? But, you know, isolate them, don't mix them together. But we got to reduce the number of homes that we have here already. And we have to find a solution to that.
Yeah, if you could try to whom would you like to ask the question?
Center. Okay. So on the permit side, and I'm going to look at the city because the city folks I think are going to tell me if I got this right. If they had their druthers, they wouldn't issue another permit to an adult family home.
We don't issue them.
In fact, they don't issue them because it's a state. So the way the law is written, the state gets to determine where these adult family homes. The cities have been cut out of it. And that was the nature of the lawsuit they brought. Is we want to be able to zone, if not eliminate, putting these individuals in adult family homes. The court said you don't have that authority. That belongs to the state. So that's why I know it's frustrating, but the problem lies with the state. Now, I'm advocating legislation to ban these. I really shouldn't have to do that. DSHS should just simply say, you know, as a matter of policy, we're going to stop putting sexual offenders in these adult family homes. They could do that tomorrow, okay? But they haven't. And you know, I've written letters to the governor, to DSHS. When Butterfield a year and a half ago was going to be released into Oak Brook, I sent a letter, got attention, the governor relented, and I'm not sure what happened to Mr. Butterfield, but he didn't go into Oak Brook. And then these 3 individuals, the prosecutor made a stink about it, the city of Lakewood did, I did as well. I'm not sure what the status is, but the problem could be solved tomorrow if DSHS would say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. I don't have power over DSHS. I'm just a mere legislator. But the governor does, and that's why I've directed my letters to the governor. That's why I've directed our letters to DSHS. If they won't listen to us, then the next step as a lawmaker is to propose a law. And that's what I did last year, and that's what I'm going to do again, is an outright ban. And it's just common sense. Yes, we need to build support, but I think even a lawmaker from Walla Walla understands that it makes no sense to put a sexual offender in a residential adult family home facility. So I'm hoping we can have a little more common sense next year. Anybody else want to?
Could I add something to that, Pat? Sure. I just want to update people. Mr. Butterfield is in Western State where he belongs, thanks to pushback from all your representatives.
And I did want to clarify, so the Butterfield release, and thank you, Mr. Prosecutor, was from Western State Hospital as opposed to these 3 individuals coming from the Special Commitment Center, but definitely, absolutely an overlap of the issues. And I myself was in contact immediately after I heard from John Caulfield about the proposed release of Mr. Butterfield, who was accused of murdering a roommate, and then things did change. And 4 times he was found incompetent to stand trial and suffers from schizophrenia. So, but that all said, when we look down the road here, we do need to keep absolutely the pressure on, keep in contact with each of us to let us know if there is a change in any of the circumstances. And you're right, I mean, it does take a while to get bills passed, and April feels like a really long time tonight, I'm thinking, to the group out here. right? So in terms of immediate action, I think keeping in contact with us, holding us accountable, each of us sponsoring legislation to solve the problem, ensuring that we have a statewide network to take on this collective responsibility is also very important. So my door is always open, and again, if there's any change in circumstances at the law enforcement level or at the city level, I hope to hear from you right away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Sloboda, and I have a couple of quick questions. I think it's clear that everybody in here is on the same page. Our representatives seem to be on the same page. Our city council seems to be on the same page. We have a fight to do on the ground level as community members. What's the motivation or the incentive for the owners of these homes to accept these individuals? Aren't they liable for some of the things that could happen under their roof? And we appreciate your attempt at the legislation, but how do we as a community get through to the owners of these businesses and encourage them to make ethical and responsible decisions about who lives in these houses? How do we discourage them from wanting to accept these violent offenders? How do we make sure that they are taking care of that responsibility to their community and make it so we can get through to them to make those ethical decisions? That's something that I think we as a community have to do, because we can legislate all day, we can sue the state, but we need to figure out a way how we can get them to not want to take these people into their house and into our neighborhood. That's open to anybody for a response.
We make more money that way.
So I guess one way to do that would be the ban. So I'll start by making the pledge that if you want an outright ban, I'll start by making that pledge. And I'd like to see every one of us do the same. Oh, don't want to take that one though.
I think I was pretty explicit when I was out here before. Yes, a ban, a complete ban. And I also mentioned that whatever bill that the senator has drafted, or will draft here pretty shortly, that I will have what's called a companion bill in the House. So we'll have a two-prong effort. I'm pretty sure, depending on how many of my cohorts are down there, we can at least get my side of the aisle to be very supportive. And I think, well, hopefully on the other side of the aisle do the same thing. You know, one of the problems is, some of the legislators, it's a NIMBY, not in my backyard. They feel that if we did that, they'd probably end up in, in the more of a commercial area, like Tacoma or Seattle and all that, where they have these areas that they're maybe more appropriate, more urban, more industrialized, more commercial, near services. Putting it in a residential area that's not near services is ludicrous. And I think not only should we have a two-prong, not only should we ban these sex offenders or any type of violent criminal from going into these adult family homes, but we need to also reduce the amount of adult family homes that we have in Oak Brook. We need zoning, we need density, and that should be the law. And to the point where, and these need to be considered businesses, and at some point, businesses need to be in a business district. I know we probably potentially have to grandfather these for a while, but I really don't believe it's a proper thing to do to have adult family home in a residential area. These wherever they have these type of like Patriots Landing or something like that, where they have these big facilities where you have 200, 300, 400 people. They don't put them in residential areas, they put them in areas deemed commercial, and that's where they should be. Thank you.
I think there are a few things. I think what can we do and what do you do now? You keep up the pressure on the prosecutor's office, on the police, on the city council, on legislators. You keep that pressure up. I think I talked about going a little bit step further than the list that the city put together, which I think are really strong recommendations. But that you require other municipalities and other counties to do their darn work. They have been complacent because Pierce County has built up, and that you require legislatively that they get penalties if they're not building up to capacity so that they can take folks in their communities as well. And I think the other thing that you continue to do is ensure, I agree that we don't want sexual, violent, predators and offenders in our neighborhoods. And I also want, my grandma, who just passed away, who was 99, who lived a long life, but, I wanted her when she couldn't take care of herself to be able to take care of. But that's not the folks that you guys are talking about. I think that as a community, we want those folks to be taken care of, but there also is a differential that if you're a sexually violent offender, that you're not in a neighborhood and that you're not in a community. And so I think what do? You keep the pressure up. You hold folks accountable. Legislation is a really long ways away. You keep the pressure up with the city and the prosecutors, but that you continue to require other counties across the state to do their darn work. And when they're not doing their darn work, you require legislation that gives incentives, really strong incentives, to hold them accountable, so that it's not Pierce County's problem and it's not Lakewood's problem solely to do.
Take 2 more questions.